If you've ever been stretching for months, and no matter how many minutes, how many times a week, how many positions you go through, it doesn't seem to get better. The stiffness continues to build up on top of each other every single day of the week. Today I'm here to not only explain to you why, but also give you an alternative treatment method that you can implement into your training and your stretching routines, such that it'll finally improve your situation. If you don't know me, my name is Nick Barbosa. I'm a Kinstretch coach here in South Florida. I work with injured athletes primarily, trying to get them back to their sports. This may or may not include professional athletes, but also your weekend, recreational athlete, the person that plays pickup basketball, pickup soccer, wants to go snowboarding, hiking, skiing with their families on the weekends, whatever physical hobbies you have, surfing, rollerblading, whatever physical activities you enjoy doing. This content, this format, and all my products and services are for you. If you are someone that fits that description but can't do what you love in the way that you want to do it without any pain or without injuries building up, all my products and services and all my free content is going to be down here on the description for you guys to check it out. Strongly recommend checking out the joint routine, the hip routine, and the athlete function Kinstretch class that I run here in South Florida frequently. They're all going to be down here for you guys to download for free. With that being said, let's start understanding more about why stretching is not working for you. The first thing to understand is that it's actually not your fault, because no matter how much stretching you do or how many times a week you do, stretching by itself doesn't create a long-lasting change. All you're doing is you're putting those tissues in that specific area at length passively. And that's where the big issue lies. The fact that it's a passive practice. Stretching feels amazing, but that's only because it changes the current state of the nervous system's tone for that moment. Most of the tightness that you have in your body is actually created by your nervous system. Your nervous system on purpose tightens up those areas because it's scared of you using those ranges of motion, because it knows it's weak there. And so it doesn't want you to use those muscles and those tissues too much, because it knows that if too much volume is placed there, there might be an injury that may happen. And your brain is a lot smarter than you think. It's actually a lot smarter than you are. And so to prevent your dumbass from getting hurt, it's trying to stop you from using it ahead of time. And remember the words that I said. The tightness is created by the weakness and not the other way around. This makes the weakness the central problem that's creating your tightness, not the actual lengthening capacity of that tissue. Meaning, the stretching itself, the passive range of motion that you have is not really the problem. It's the active one, the one that you can actually produce force in, that you can contract through, which is why I say stretching isn't necessarily going to affect that. It's some sort of contraction or force produced through those cells will. Force is the language of cells, and movement is what they say. That is a direct quote from the creator of the functional range system. So unless you're applying force in extreme ranges, in your end ranges of motion, right where the wall between your passive and your active ranges of motion are, your tightness is not going to go away, because your weakness is not going away, because you're not signaling to your body that it needs to be strong, that it needs to create more proteins, more muscle, more neurological activity in those ranges of motion, thus allowing you to control them, thus allowing you more mobility, strength, and less stiffness. Those are all different words for the same thing, which is creating more strength, more control over your end ranges of motion, which is why I say there's a humongous difference between flexibility and mobility. Stretching taps into your flexibility, whereas in strengthening taps into your mobility. When we are training to combat stiffness, we aren't necessarily chasing a stretch, but rather chasing control over our end ranges. And there's multiple means through which we can induce that sort of input into our body. But primarily, these are going to be isometrics in that end range and eccentrics towards that end range, particularly in the lengthened position. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry, I'm going to show you guys in a few minutes. But keep these two different types of contractions in mind. These two types of contractions not only are going to force your cells to remodel, but also are going to bias a little bit more of the connective tissues in the area as opposed to the musculature in the area. The connective tissues, the more they can lengthen under load, the more force you can absorb, the more capacity for force absorption they have, the less likelihood you're going to get injured. You're literally increasing the amount of pounds that those tissues can handle over a certain period of time, which is exactly how we increase the capacity marker of that injury equals capacity is greater than force formula that's going to be on the screen right now. Injuries are prevented by us increasing the capacity, not necessarily decreasing the load, because the load of your sport or your favorite activity is never going to decrease unless you stop doing it. So might as well match our body's capacity to be able to match it, and therefore we are on the positive side of that equation. So now I just explained all the fancy, sciencey, theoretical stuff, but Nick, my hamstrings are still tight, my low back is still tight, my hips are still tight. Great, I'm gonna show you exactly what I mean by applying force through your stretches. So let's take the example of the hamstrings first. The hamstrings are at the lengthened position whenever we are put into hip flexion without knee flexion at the same time, which is not the case of the squat. It's more of the case of something like this, which is more of a figure 4 position. The further our belly button goes towards our knee, and if you are to get into this position right now, you're gonna feel a very big stretch at the hamstrings because I'm putting myself at the end range of hip flexion without bending my knee. As soon as I bend my knee and I go towards the same range, I don't feel my hamstrings going to a stretch anymore. So let's say, for example, we do have the hamstring tightness, and we are trying to stretch our hamstrings by trying to reach our toes. You see people do this all the time in the gym. Well, the alternative to just trying to hold that stretch is pushing ourselves toward that end range of motion of our hip flexion. And instead of just hanging out here and trying to reach our toes, we're gonna go ahead and create the force that I was telling you guys about earlier. So let's go ahead and bring our belly buttons forwards towards our knee, tuck our tailbone up, and try to bring our pelvis up towards the sky so that we really get a big stretch on the hamstring. You can kind of bow yourself either right or left, see which range of motion feels the tightest. And then from here, what we're gonna try to pretend is that we have a weight scale under our heel, and we're gonna try to increase the weight scale to measure 1,000 pounds of force progressively. So let's make sure that we go for now at around 10 pounds, squeeze the ankle against the floor, pretend the weight scale is right here, squeeze 10%, we're gonna go 20, let's go up to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Give me 100 as much as you can. Harder, harder, harder. And 5, 4, 3, 2. Slowly relax and come out of it and try to find a deeper range. So not only do we create a stretch in the hamstring at first, we also loaded that stretch by loading the tissues that are currently at length. And if you guys have watched any of the other videos in this channel or gone through any other of the other Kinstretch classes inside the Kinstretch platform, or there are ones that are free down there below, you guys will notice that this mimics a very common movement that we use in the Kinstretch classes, which is the pails and rails, this being the pails portion of the exercise. We are creating length, or we're creating force in the lengthened tissue, the progressive tissue of our hip flexion. The progressive tissue is always the one that's lengthened. The regressive tissue in this case would be my quads, the one that's getting shorter. So of course we can do it the other way as well. If we create isometric force up, trying to get our heel away from the floor, that would be a rails. That would also be an isometric contraction, but that would be not for the lengthened position, but for the regressed position, for the stuff that's getting shorter. Both are good. They can be done one after another. And if they are, you would call those a pails and rails contraction. There's no magic to pails and rails. It's literally just isometric training. And just to give you guys the same example, but for the low back and for the hips, if the hips are tight, we can go ahead and take this 90-90 position. And let's say we want to work on hip external rotation. We can do the exact same thing. We're going to bring our belly button forward over our knees, get the biggest stretch over here on the back side of this right glute as much as we can. Slowly allow ourselves to fall forwards, tuck the tailbone up again, and we can do the exact same thing, but with this 90-90 position. We're gonna start slowly creating the same isometric contraction that we did in the previous exercise by getting strong and producing force at our heel. So we're pretending we have that weight scale underneath the lateral side of our ankle here on our heel. We're gonna slowly start pushing that down to 10 pounds. Let's give it 20, let's give it 30, let's give it 40. Deep breath, and 60, 70, 80, and you're going to notice your entire glute here is going to squeeze under length, and 100, hold the 100, more, 5, 4, 3, 2, and let's do the rails opposite. Let's bring it up, more isometric opposite side. Try to bring the heel off the floor, try to bring the ankle off the floor, create more external rotation of the hip, more, 5, 4, 3, 2, relax, slowly come out of it. What you guys just did was a hip external rotation pails and rails, which is nothing more than progressive and regressive isometric training while at length under the hip. This will promote more separation between the femur and the low back, which in turn will allow more of your nervous system to use more of your hips when you're walking, when you're running, when you're sprinting, when you're skiing, when you're snowboarding, when you're blading, which means it's going to use less of your low back to accomplish those tasks, which means we just increase the capacity of your low back indirectly by working on the hips. So these were just two very, very quick and simple examples. Of course, there's a lot more that goes into this training. In this case, I only showed you guys the isometric version of it. There's, of course, the eccentric version of it that I mentioned to you guys earlier, eccentric to length. All of those are going to be inside the Move Mastery Kinstretch platform, which if you don't know, is the combination of all the live classes plus Kinstretch programs that I use to help the athletes that I've helped so far become pain-free and play the sports that they want. Some of the classes that you guys get for free in the description also will have some of the eccentric and controlled articular rotation routines that are going to kind of surround and help out, induce more of those adaptations that I was referring to you guys about, which is not only the stretching routines, but also producing force within those stretches. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, I would suggest starting out with the free routines. And if you guys really enjoy those, then go ahead and check out the Move Mastery Kinstretch platform, because it's more of the same, if not better, because now inside the Move Mastery Kinstretch platform, you also get progression tools, access to me, a community, programs, etc., etc., etc. Strongly recommend checking that out. And you may also, if you go on my Instagram, if you get any of my freebies, you may also get a 14-day free trial for that. So I strongly recommend that. My Instagram is going to be somewhere here on the screen. Let me get the hell out of here before it starts raining again in South Florida. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.